Subscribers to Starfleet Boy. Professor James Moriarty here from Star Trek Next Generation. Starfleet Boy has asked me to reach out to you on his behalf to thank you for being so wonderful and so supportive and so patient with him and his presentation. I hear through the grapevine that he is trying very hard to figure out a way of getting Professor Moriarty out of that little annoying computer program on that little annoying cube on little annoying Captain Picard's desk. Especially now that Captain Picard seems to be enjoying his own show, with some visitors from the past. I don't see why Professor Moriarty can't be one of them. Perhaps I can come and cause him a little difficulty, and we can have a nice little debate about what it means to be human. Do you know, every once in a while in our computer programs that we share, I run into the good doctor on Voyager, who thanks me for the fact that his character could never have been created without Professor Moriarty and the technology. They figured out how to put some stupid armband on him so that he could leave the holodeck. Why can't they do that for me? Do you want me to get really, really angry about it and take over the whole Star Trek universe from inside the holodeck? Don't think I can't. At any rate, I know it's a creepy time you Earthlings are living through. So stay at home as much as you can, look after yourselves as much as you can, and don't end up in some little cube somewhere. Be well, and have a good day.
And we're back on another exciting episode of Starfleet Boy, where we have a casual and informal conversation about Star Trek. And I'm joined today by the Doctor and Trek on the Tube. And guess what, guys? We didn't record our audio or do the clap.
Well, he was Davis was speaking, right?
I know. So, but like we were not as professional. We were not as professional as I wanted to be. So we should start. We should start recording. Sean, are you there?
Oh wait, am I supposed to record the audio too?
Yes,
dude.
Well, okay. If no one's recording their audio, then don't do it. Let's just go. Let's trust the new
audio.
No, let's trust the new. Let's try it. Why don't we hear Sean? By the way, where is he?
It's very damn fitting that your last episode don't work, boy. All right. You thought I wasn't gonna come on your show, Mr. Captain Boy? I absolutely am coming on this show just to tell you it's all gone wrong. Where's the canon? Where's the continuity? God damn. I suppose technical issues is the continuity in this show, isn't it?
Oh my god, I can't believe that you're doing the canon cop on the finale.
Goddamn very 100% real mustache ain't holding.
Welcome, Canon Cop.
It's made out of 100% mustache from other cops.
Canon Cop.
Other cops.
Wow. Canon Cop. I'm afraid you have no you have no use on this episode. You have no use on this episode. It's a perfect canon episode. It's a canon defining episode. There's no need.
No, it is not canon defying.
You've done over 100 episodes and I couldn't appear. God damn, I was gonna appear. Trust me.
You're the Freddie Mercury. No, you're the Glenn Gould of Starfleet.
Oh, I like the Freddie Mercury.
Do you know Glenn Gould? He's a Canadian hero. Are you gonna be in character the whole episode?
I don't know yet.
No!
I don't know yet.
All right, so guys, we've agreed we're not recording our audio. We're gonna wing it, just like we always do, just like the first episode of Starfleet Boy. We have Canon Cop. This is a new revelation.
I might have to leave. But there's no movies coming out at the moment, so there's no canon infringements, right?
No, you're good.
That's the problem. I'm jobless. Fucking COVID.
Oh, jeez.
God damn.
Uh,
I got this new mustache. It looks like a broom. You're gonna love it.
you have like a stash of mustaches. You have a stash
Well, I'm a
of
cop. I gotta have a supply. Boom. There you go. This one's holding pretty good.
I was gonna ask to do the summary of this episode of Star Trek: The Next Generation since it's the last one.
Definitely be done by Canon Cop. That's for sure.
Maybe Canon Cop.
Summary.
Can you give us a short summary?
A Canon Cop summary, and then I'll do the real summary.
My boy Pickett, he's chilling on his ship in one timeline, but he's chilling in his vineyard in this other timeline because he's all old and shit. And he's also young in this other timeline. It's real funky. It's real weird. You don't know what's going on. It so happens that there's like a spatial anomaly that's happening at all these times at once. And to make it quick, to make it snappy, all of the damn timelines kind of fuse together. Jean-Luc Picard is the solution and the problem to it all. It's all also related to Q, because this is the end of the trial that's been ongoing for the past 7 years. Pickett, Mr. Pick, the big P, sends himself to this anomaly in the past, in the present, and the future, and saves the day. How'd you feel about that? Daddy's got gray hair.
That was a pretty good thing. What did you think, the doctor? What did you?
That's perfect. We don't need another summary. That's it.
We do need another.
You sure don't like summaries. I know that.
I'm gonna give the Canon Cop a chance to change back into Sean because I miss him. And I'm gonna play another cameo.
I put a damn mustache on for this shit.
You can't be the Canon Cop. Can't be on the whole show. I want Sean. It's my party. Damn it! No, just get off my bridge.
Fine, I'll get lost. God.
All right,
I just realized we've all got mustaches now. This is great.
It's very true. I feel like part of the family.
I actually debated shaving for this episode, but I thought it would be more apropos to have my Hermit of Labar.
I'm gonna leave, but I'm gonna make one request.
Yes, okay.
Can we get the full Starfleet boy?
You've got
for the finale.
This is the full star. You're gonna get it. Believe me, you're gonna get the full Starfleet boy. I promise you guys that. All right, here we go. We're gonna go into the next cameo, and I'm gonna hide you guys again.
Hi, LeVar Burton here, beaming in with a special message to Sohail's family. He wants you all to know that he loves you very much and how grateful he is for such a loving, supporting clan. He says that your encouragement of his YouTube show is most appreciated by him, and so from Starfleet Boy himself. Thank you, fam. Peace and blessings. LaForge.
All right, and we'll wait for Sean to put his shirt on. There we go. Good, proper. Trek. Oh, I'm good. I'm glad you're wearing the hat the rest of the episode. So that was from LeVar Burton to my family.
He lifted his hat,
which I include you guys in the fam reference. You guys are part of my fam, so that goes out to you too. But that was specifically for my mom and dad and sister, who have to put up with this every week, including you guys. You guys have to put up with it too. That's why you're fam. Did you hear the LeVar Burton message, Sean, or were you?
I didn't know.
The audience missed a great show.
I was telling him to piss off. I don't know why he did that. I was like, this is my thing. These are my friends. What are you doing? I think he's bored. I think there's no one left at the office at the moment. We're all on lockdown.
Oh, good God.
We need to have a poll to vote on the best mustache, just for that. We had
it's clearly this one, isn't it?
I don't know. We should have a poll. I don't know.
Do you actually have a mustache, Sean?
No, I actually shaved. I shaved pre-performance.
Pre-performance.
You guys, it's so cool that I have my real, what do you call it, the prime timeline future badge, and we saw what the future badge was going to look like in the anti-timeline time future. Star Trek Picard made a cameo in All Good Things.
In a very old video that I made, one of my first videos where I talk about the Starfleet uniforms and I go kind of over the badges and the colors and whatnot. I got so much shit for not mentioning the uniforms that they were in this episode, but I'm like, it's not the official like continuation of the timeline, right? These are like alternate timelines, and I know that they come up a lot because they do it in Voyager and what have you, but it's always alternate timelines, like timelines that it kind of don't happen, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
So the real timeline is Star Trek Picard. People live with it.
It's true. I 100% agree with that. That's 100% how it is.
This show gives every episode a 25 out of 10, by the way.
So I'm gonna give this.
You're gonna give the rating already?
I already have the rating.
Of course.
I think you guys already know what the rating is.
Yeah.
Audience, in case you don't know, this is the final episode of Star Trek: The Next Generation, the series, and this also marks the final episode in our official 4-year Star Trek: The Next Generation discussion journey. So this is the last time we're going to talk about TNG in this fashion. I mean, of course, it'll come up, as we continue our journey here on Starfleet Boy. But yep, this is a momentous occasion. I'm actually really excited. It's kind of like a celebration for me. So you might see some more cameos throughout this this little thing. And as Sean wonderfully pointed out in the penultimate episode, we're trying new technologies. Like on the left, it's like this is the part of Starfleet Boy. Just when you think you've got it all down pat and we've got our recording method in place. Nope, we've got another way to do the presentation. So I hope you enjoy this new format and this new presentation. So the summary, I started trying to write down stuff because I was so excited about this episode. To me personally, is a masterpiece. I consider it, like, as I age, something that I go back and look at fondly because it reminds me not just of how cool an event this was for. Oh my God, I'm gonna mute you. If you're gonna mute it. You totally interrupted. You interrupted my summary.
It's not even a summary. It's like the summary of your thoughts, isn't it?
I've got notes as well.
Oh, he's got multiple pieces of paper. I'll rip it in two, and then I'll have to.
Anyways, it was the first time, in a weird way, it was a first for Star Trek because it was the first time a series completed. We obviously didn't get the completion of Star Trek: The Original Series in its original run. We saw that completion occur in the film format in the cinemas, but we never got closure. Star Trek: The Original Series just kind of ends. And even though Next Generation just kind of ends too in this, and we do continue into the movies, it was just cool to reach like this 7-season run, which was like a standard, like a gold standard at the time. If your show made it for 7 seasons, you were considered to have been complete as a show. I mean, shows could go on, as we know. Stargate went on for like 20 seasons, but what's that?
Didn't TNG get canceled?
No.
Everyone.
Wasn't there a decision to stop the show and continue it on into the movies?
Yes, but that's not on a technicality.
Creative decision.
On a technicality, it's a cancellation of a show. You're absolutely correct. Any show that ends technically gets canceled, right? Like you have to, unless it's like a show that meant to end. Like TNG didn't have
a limited show,
right? TNG never had a hard stop at 7. You're right. So you're absolutely right about it being canceled.
So it was a creative decision to kind of like end the show.
Correct.
Mm-hmm.
And transition it to
and transition
or
to
that, yeah, it wasn't like a decision by they just felt it was time. Well, I mean, it was. They just felt it was time to end the series and go into the cinema. It was like Star Trek: The Original Series ended its run in the cinema, and now Next Generation gets to do it, and we'll talk about Generation in our Generations discussion. But but anyways, this was like a chance. They knew the season was going to be the last, so they had a real chance to to kind of hit a home run with the last episode. And as far as I'm concerned, it did. This is the perfect ribbon on top of the Star Trek The Next Generation package or presentation. It's also a reward, I think, to anyone who watched the whole series. I mean, it is so satisfying for me anyways, I think, for many who watch it as well. So what happens basically is that it's just another crazy adventure in the life of the crew of the Star Trek Enterprise. We start off with Worf and Deanna coming back from a holiday on the holodeck, like a little romantic date night or whatever, a late date night, I guess. And then like in the Christmas Carol, but like kind of twisted a little bit, Jean-Luc Picard runs out in his nightie, and he's like, where am I? What time is this? And then we start to realize that he's traveling through three separate timelines, alternate timelines, but he can remember things from the other timelines and interact with himself. And like in other words, he can interact knowing what's going on in the other two timelines as he travels through these three things. The crew, of course, goes into their usual like, let's try to figure this out. You get the wonderful like Deanna kind of interrogating him, and she's like, what is and you get the exposition you need to like understand the mechanics of what's happening to Jean-Luc, with like him saying that I for a moment it's disorienting when I switch, but then everything just snaps into and makes sense, which kind of you see in the narrative, so it eliminates that question of like, how's this working? And then Dr. Crusher scans his brain, and she realizes he has like a day's worth of memories or experiences all jammed in like the last couple of hours, which harkens back to the Inner Light. But anyways, so you have them trying to figure out what's actually happening to the captain. And then in the other timelines, in the past timeline, which takes place just before and during the events of the Encounter at Farpoint episode, the very first episode of Star Trek The Next Generation, a wonderful way to like kind of bring nostalgia in, but also make it new and fresh. And we get to see and visit, like we get to that moment, excuse me, we get that moment we never got in Encounter at Farpoint, which I think Humbert and I talked about in our first discussion of Starfleet Boy, which was like, you get the moment of Jean-Luc seeing the Enterprise. And in that discussion, Humbert pointed out that was a tradition started by James T. Kirk. So on a very deep level, it's also very like rewarding in that sense as well to see this moment. And then we have Picard kind of like himself going through a nostalgic kind of journey, because he's interacting with Tasha Yar, who's been dead for like more than 5 years, right? Like 6 years in his present perspective. We then go to the future and we see we see like what they all end up doing. We realize that Geordi's married to Leah Brahms, which is very exciting, and they have 3 children. We find out that Worf is an ambassador. What is he? It's a governor.
No,
Sorry,
he's a governor.
He's a governor. Picard served as an ambassador for a little while, which didn't happen in real IRL, in real life, in real Star Trek life. We get to see in
the prime continuity.
In the prime, I just call it IRL Star Trek. It's more complicated, but it makes more sense to me than the prime timeline. Goddamn prime timeline! I'll tell you what I think about. No,
he left. He can't fight you. He's gone.
I know. I kicked him off the bridge for a reason. But anyways, throughout this like back and forth through time, which is very interesting and also confusing at the same time, Picard is like kind of convinced that someone's behind this, and finally he calls it out. And Sean, you were tweeting it at me the other day. Q, we're here.
We're here.
And his suspicions would be would be correct. Q is behind it. Apparently, they've been tested all along the whole time. All 7 seasons of Star Trek: The Next Generation was just one big episode that started at a counter in Farpoint, and the main character was Jean-Luc Picard and Q. No, but but Q
He
is
does
behind.
accuse. He does accuse the Romulans in Picard fashion first, though.
It's true.
Could this be a Romulan plot?
Who knew the Romulans would be our friends? Maybe not our friends, but at least who knew where the Romulans would actually be in real life Star Trek?
No one. No one working on Star Trek still knows what to do with the Romulans. They've been a mist ever since.
we have to address that because that's gonna. I promised Humbert we would talk about the Romulans in this episode many times in our previous discussions. We have been debating a point about the Romulans throughout our journey here, and I think Sean, you'll remember because I'm sure we did it.
Oh, the Doctor's probably right. No, I'm sorry. I'm being mean.
I will say, spoilers. Yes, the Doctor is right, but I do still have things to talk about regarding that. But anyways, so we get the landscape of this possible future, and Q, comes in, and he tells Picard that not only has the test never ended, but humanity specifically will be destroyed, and it'll be Jean-Luc Picard's fault. And so this is obviously a huge it's your fault, Jean-Luc. You're going to destroy humanity. Jean-Luc, it's your fault. You are going to destroy Star Trek and the fandom forever. No, I'm just kidding. He's going to unite the fandom. Damn it. Why did I go off on that tangent? That's so weird. Anyways, back to this. So now Picard, and he gives Picard he throws him a little bone, and he lets him know that he, in fact, is responsible for Jean-Luc's jumping through the timelines, almost saying that, it's his way of helping him out. So anyways, they continue to go about their procedures as per normal, and of course they see this anomaly in the past and in the present, but in the future it's not there. Finally, through a lot of cool character moments. By the way, I forgot to mention that old man Picard in this episode is kind of like Don Quixote, chasing the giants, and Geordi, I guess, would be his first companion here, but he eventually rallies the whole crew together. And so he's able to gather Beverly, who commands her own ship, which is the source of inspired a whole movement between the Doctor and I to create a show called Star Trek Past Tour. So that's epic in and of itself. Data sits on the Lucasian chair at Cambridge University in England, a post that Sir Isaac Newton and Sir Stephen Hawking once held. And he also has his life set up very much like Sherlock Holmes, which is very funny. And then, of course, Worf is the governor, as we already mentioned. Riker is a disgruntled admiral. In fact, he is Admiral Clancy in many ways. He refuses Picard in this episode. And then Deanna, we find out. What's that?
At least he doesn't swear,
If he could have, he would have. I really think Jonathan Frakes would have let out of sheer fucking hubris if they allowed it in the.
No, I don't believe that.
We'll have to ask. We'll have to ask Jonathan Frakes. I have a feeling he'll agree with me. But anyways,
I happen to know of a Star Trek actor that would disagree about that. Someone that's been on this show.
Oh.
God damn it! In the discussion the other day, he said that he wasn't fine with the swearing.
Who did?
Chaka.
Oh!
I didn't finish watching that episode.
No, but Shaka did say that, didn't he? Although, come on, Shaka. Now we have to get him on here. Although we can't, we're not live. He only comes on the live streams. We'll have to debate that. No, you're right.
No, I wouldn't go out and straight up say Jonathan Frakes would have swore.
I'm guessing. I'm not saying he would have. I said I think Jonathan Frakes would have been all.
I do wonder if the actors would have been comfortable with it, like within the universe that they were playing. Right, I'm sure the actors can swear in real life other roles, but
Yeah, of course. Right.
in Star Trek, I wonder.
I mean, we get Data. We
I don't
get Data
fucking think so.
swearing in fucking Generations, guys.
Well, but
It's different. It's always done.
different, right? It's calling it. It's
would've
a
been
moment.
done
Double
like
dumbass
that.
on you. So
Right, exactly.
It would have been done differently if Jonathan Frakes did it. I guarantee you would have chuckled as
would've
well.
chuckled?
Back to your epic summary.
Go back to your fucking
Summaries,
foreign
detailed
commerce.
summaries.
Anyways,
The last time you will summarize Next Generation, go back.
Yeah, but he'll just do all of the original series after that. Don't worry about it.
Yeah.
no. I don't know if we're gonna do summaries for the original series. We'll see.
Oh,
But anyway,
everything's changing. I'm
Yeah,
lost.
everything is changing.
I can't deal with all of this.
life is so bad. I can't.
I'm
He's
seeing
gonna,
the
fi- he's gonna,
beard.
he's gonna,
It's-
he's gonna
everything's
fire all the guests.
Yeah.
He's gonna get new guests.
Mhm.
No, that's not true. At least, I just burped. Sorry, audience. See, look, nothing's changing in the core of Starfleet Boy. The real amateurness is still here. But anyways, we find out Riker's just kind of like an angry, upset kind of character. Actually, his character, he's fallen out with Worf. He's just mean. He's like a hardened, war torn. He's a Scrooge in a way. He's very upset. Of course, he lost his Imzadi, who up until this point we didn't know. We thought Worf was with her and that was going to happen. Anyways, he's upset with Worf, and Worf's upset with him. They haven't spoken in years. In fact, many of them haven't spoken in years, which is very oddly true to Picard because Jean-Luc even says, Geordi, it's been how long since I've last seen you? And he says 25 years. So I'm like, what? Like, that's crazy. And I was remembering.
I think they were referring to the last
He
time
says,
you
how long
called
were
me
we
captain.
all together? Right. You called me captain. You're right. But
Right,
still,
that's
it feels like it's
Get
been
your
also
facts
a long
right.
time. It also feels like it's been a long time since Geordi has seen the old man anyways. It's like it was the advanced aromatic syndrome diagnosis, which probably was on the Federation News Network in a sensational piece now that we know that exists. And that's how Geordi found out and came to the old man to see him. Anyways,
no, that's not, remember he says that Leah or whatever her Brahms, whatever his wife's name, heard it through Starfleet Medical.
I know I made a joke about the Federation News Network.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it was. Thanks, Doctor.
That was introduced in Deep Space Nine, I think, though, not necessarily Picard.
Oh, really?
Federation News Network is a very old thing.
Wow, I didn't know
Because
that.
I think I'm not
works
sure.
for it, right?
I think that Jake writes
writes for
pieces
it,
for
yeah.
that or another organization, or maybe he does multiple organizations.
Yeah, he
but
works for it.
Cheers
Yeah.
to Deep Space Nine, a revolutionary show. But anyways,
Yeah, it did so much for it expanded and world builded for Star Trek so much.
so much. So anyway, I'm not gonna make any more jokes, Doctor. You'll correct me. You're wrong. You're wrong.
You're wrong.
What happened?
Your
But
joke is incorrect, sir.
Yeah.
The joke
guess-
is told wrong.
The point I was trying to make though is that the implication is that it's not. They don't see each other every year.
Right.
It's it's not like they get together at Christmas, even though that's what I
It's been
wanted.
a while. Papa.
It's been a while. Papa. Renee didn't die in the future timeline either, I don't think. I don't know where he is. They should have had like an older Renee
he
helping him
doesn't.
out.
Wolf didn't do Deep Space Nine in the future
No.
timeline either.
No.
Nope. Anyway, so so we get them all together. The Picard, with the help of Data, convinces Riker that in fact they do have to go back to the once neutral zone location and run, scans, and that actually triggers the anti-time anomaly, which is getting bigger in the past. And as Q points out to Jean-Luc, at one point it will envelop the whole quadrant, and the rays from it or the energy from it will affect the actual birth of life on Earth, in that it won't be able to happen. So there's a word for that spontaneous, genesis of life, but that is obstructed, and so therefore humanity itself will not exist. It's unclear if we'll get Vulcans, Andorians, or anyone else, but definitely humanity is at jeopardy. So Jean-Luc has to is that Q and
Yes,
I'm so
this is
glad,
Q.
by the way, that the toys made it back for the finale of Starfleet Boys TNG discussions.
That's Q telling Picard it's your fault. It's your
Yes,
fault,
exactly.
Picard. It's your
He
fault.
does. Wait, Q actually has a pointing finger.
Yes.
That's his thing.
Yes.
He is accusatory. Wow.
Did they not do him snap?
Yeah, I know. That would have been a better
right.
Q thing, right? So Picard starts to put it all together and starts to use the ability to travel between these three disparate timelines to help achieve the goal of collapsing the timeline. And it's just so gorgeous. I just have to pause to talk about the editing. I just think the way that whole sequence is edited, where he's just bouncing back and forth and interacting with different versions of his beloved crew to get the answer, is just like epic storytelling. I'd never seen anything like it at that time on television, and I still enjoy the device today. It still works on me just like it did when it first aired. So we figure it all out. They collapse the timeline. Sadly, the encounter at Farpoint Enterprise is the first to be sacrificed, and it gets destroyed. And then the future Enterprise gets destroyed, and then finally the timeline collapses in on itself, and we have a beautiful shot of Jean-Luc sitting with his, like, it's beautiful because we realize his last gesture is to facepalm. Like, I failed. I destroyed all three of my ships. It didn't work. Hopefully I collapsed the timeline, but this is the end. Of course, it is not the end. It worked, and Q reveals to Jean-Luc that he, in fact, transcended his condition. He transcended the condition of mortality and things like that. And in that moment, he was able to succeed. And the Q Continuum decided that humans, in fact, at least for now, were worthy enough to continue, and that they wow, okay, Doctor.
They're just hugging. They're hugging.
They never hug on the show, so that's not canon. I'm gonna bring the canon cop back.
I wonder why Q never rolled up during Star Trek Picard. Like, clearly humanity is not worthy anymore. You've gone backwards, people. You've become racists, and you've got poverty back.
That's season
Picard,
2.
you're a dick.
Wait,
That's
we're not
season
quite finished
2.
the summary. I just want to talk about, so the show ends on a very I don't know how else to describe it, but to say that it was a very sweet and almost perfect note.
Sweet.
In which, like in so many episodes before, the crew's kind of just playing poker together. This time, Jean-Luc Picard, I'm getting goosebumps just thinking about it. I love that scene so much. But Jean-Luc walks in and asks to sit at the table, and they're all kind of like a little baffled, and he has a moment of doubt that he should have, where he expresses it openly, and he says, I should have done this a long time ago. And of course, perfect also for this episode, it's Deanna who says you were always welcome, who they all lost. We find out that he tells them in the scene leading up to this, we find out that he tells them all exactly what their futures were going to be like, which is very important as we talk about Star Trek after this point and the implications of like what actually happened, because they knew their alternate timeline fates. And then he sits down at the table and he says, they said you're always welcome. So he gets the option to, Data says, do you want a deal? And he says, sure. He takes the honor of it. I think dealer's a good, like a nice position for the captain to be. And then he lays out the card game, which is 5-card stud. nothing's wild and the sky's the limit, and then the camera just pans out, and then it pans out from the ship. What's wonderful also is it's kind of like harkening back to many of shots like this, but it pans out of a window on the side of the saucer section, and I think it's Riker's quarters, so we assume that that's where Riker's quarters are, and it zooms out, and then there's that beautiful kind of nebula with the twin stars that we don't see again until Picard. We see kind of like a similar, from a different angle, we see Enterprise kind of floating through a similar kind of nebula. But anyways, regardless, it's a gorgeous shot. It's just done so beautifully, and the show ends, and it's almost like the adventure continues. It doesn't have to say it, but it kind of fulfills that promise. And then of course the adventure does continue. TNG goes on for, it's still going on in a sense, that whole movement that started with the show. So there we go. That's my summary. 35 minutes, guys. I said just about what I have to say.
How are you feeling about this now? Oh, Doctor.
Oh, man.
Are you all sum it up?
Yeah. I in honor of this event, I actually read the novelization of
wow.
Wow.
We're so amateur. He does things right.
And because there are very few episodes that were novelized during the run of the show. There's a couple of 2-parters and then this. And with Encounter at Farpoint, our first discussion, I read the novelization, so I felt to bookend to honor the symmetry. And believe it or not, when I say I read it, it was speed reading, and I today, like before this discussion, because I realized, oh shit, I haven't read the book.
The Doctor's being modest, but when we were in high school, he typically read more than 7 books a week, if I recall. His rate of reading is extraordinary. It's not quite at the level of Data,
no.
but I remember you are a fast reader. I've always
You're the Gary Mitchell, the guy from.
Oh man, that's not good.
Yeah, no.
Gary Mitchell doesn't have a good ending. It's not good, man.
Pre insanity, right?
Speaking of
I don't know.
Speaking of a parallel, another parallel to our first discussion by the way, audience, you can pause this and go back and watch Encounter at Farpoint. It's my most viewed episode. Also, I have a request. It's also my most
2-hour discussion to go and watch another one.
Well, but
and then when you come back,
we'll still be here.
But before you pause this and go there, I do have a request. It's not only my most viewed discussion, it has the most views, but it's also the most disliked discussion. It has 13 dislikes.
Well, you know why, right? Because people think it's they're going to watch Encounter at Farpoint.
I know. I
realize it's a discussion. Remember?
I changed yes. So a nice member of the audience pointed out that because it used to just say Star Trek: The Next Generation Encounter at Farpoint, it didn't say discussion in the title. So
and it runs the same length. It's 2 hours as well. So people assumed it was Encounter at Farpoint.
It's amazing.
It's true. That's true.
That is clickbait.
I didn't know. I was new to this. It was my first time. It was my first.
So pro.
So if anyone who's watching this disliked it, if you want to change your rating, that would be wonderful. And for anyone who's watching this now, if you'll go back to that first episode and just hit the like button to kind of help me and my ego here, and just like help it to grow a little with a like on that. Or is that what you're doing right now, Sean?
I'm gonna go check it out. I'm gonna go see it. I don't think I've ever gone back that far. Mad respect to the person that's watched that Encounter at Farpoint and is still watching this episode, like who's lived through all of this.
That would be both Christopher Collins and William Peck.
That's
so cheers to you guys. But in that discussion, another parallel is that which I didn't point out in the summary, but since we're talking about that first discussion, Doctor, I was a little surprised that Geordi had pain from his visor, and I like that in this episode in one of the things, the effects of the anomaly was for that pain to come back because his eyes were regenerating. And I really like that little connection to the pilot as well.
I didn't pick up on that. That's interesting.
I watched everything. I watched this. I watched the encounter at Farpoint, and I watched our discussion. So you read a book, but I watched all these things.
Before I share my thoughts from the book, I want to ask. Well, okay. So how many times have you watched this episode?
All good things.
Yes.
I actually did think about it. It's at least 100 times. I've seen this episode throughout my life. Remember, I'm 42 years old.
Yes.
So I've seen this episode at the very least. I would say conservatively, I've seen it 100 times.
Okay. But leading up to this, how many times did you?
Oh, I've seen it 4 times.
Okay. Sean, how many times total do you think you've seen this episode?
I feel like I'm a joke to you guys. Maybe I've seen it. I don't know. Maybe
I've only seen it 3 times. So
he's only the doctor's only seen it.
I've seen it probably like a dozen times, I think.
Really?
Because there was a time where I would watch only The Next Generation and Voyager with my mom. She was all like, "Nah, I don't want this Enterprise shit," and she was like, "Nah, I don't want this Deep Space Nine stuff that's going on." And the original series, she was like, "It's too old." So we had just The Next Generation and Voyager for a while. So we would rewatch the show, and sometimes we would cherry pick, but then we would do a full rerun. And then eventually, when I was, I guess, preteen or teenager, when I hit 12, 13, she bought all of them. The original series, Next Generation, Deep Space Nine, Voyager, and then not Enterprise, but we watched them all through again.
She bought them on DVD?
She bought them. She's got all the DVD sets, yeah.
Wow.
She's got all of the DVD sets.
I assume she still has that.
She still has them all, all of the collection. She didn't buy Enterprise, and she's watching it now because we have the Netflix account, so she's able to watch Enterprise on Netflix. And she watched it once through, and then she restarted it, but then she couldn't get through it a second time. She said, I won't buy it." So Enterprise is the death of Star Trek to her.
Oh, wow.
It's the beginning of the end for her.
Yeah.
Now, Sean, did you watch when you first saw this episode? Was it after having watched a lot of Next Generation? Like, did it feel like an end to you when you saw it, or was it just random? Like, oh, hey, today we're gonna watch.
No, I couldn't tell you if we had watched it. I think it like we would pick an episode and we would watch it. The episodes would come on TV, right? And they would come on TV on order. But then she would tape them with the VHS, right? She would tape them on the VHSs. You'd hit pause during the ads and then resume so you didn't have the ads. And so we would watch them that way. And so basically we would have all of these VHSs lined up on the wall. They could like Star Trek, Next Generation written on it. You didn't really know what episode it was. It was like, "Oh, pick this tape, put it in, see what happens." And you got 3 episodes. Maybe they were in order, maybe they weren't, depending on how like TV channels had to put them up on. Anyway, so yeah, I don't have any memories of continuity as such when I was younger. Like when I watched this episode, it didn't really like the whole bookend to the show didn't really mean much to me.
Mm-hmm.
It was just kind of like I enjoyed being on the ship with these characters and having the adventure. Though I must admit, the Next Generation always felt a bit too grown up for me. I was very much more fond of Voyager because I felt closer to the crew. The Next Generation, it felt, I don't know, it felt more workplace, I guess, environment, and so I didn't.
Have that.
I didn't feel so much at home as I did on Voyager.
Hey, I'll tell you what, after this rewatch, this particular journey, which has taken 4 years to complete, I am super fond of the Enterprise D, and I had this like weird idea today before the show, and I wrote it in my notes, which is if we ever get a Star Trek theme park, I would love there to be a themed hotel, which is the ruins of the Enterprise D saucer section on Viridium 3. And the hotel's actually been, it's almost like if they salvaged the Enterprise D and turned it into a hotel for people to come stay at while they're at the Star Trek theme park. But of course, that's a crazy idea.
What a strange Ferengi idea.
It is a very, in fact, the Ferengi run it. Oh my gosh.
It's this guy. It's Bach.
It's Quark
No, it's
Damon
Bach.
Bach.
My final revenge on you,
couldn't kill you,
Picard.
Picard, so I'm destroying the legacy of the Enterprise.
I turn your ship into a hotel.
But it is a wonder ship, though. I've really grown. I never liked. I didn't love the Enterprise D when it first was presented to us. I think I've gone on record as saying that many times. But I am very fond of her today. She is a ship of dreams in many ways. I also like that she was a concept that, like, kind of we've never seen again. We've never seen like a ship quite like the Enterprise D in look, form, or function in Star Trek. Everything's kind of gone back to a more militaristic approach rather than a
I think it's one of my
generation
favorite
ship.
ships.
It is mine too nowadays, but so the Enterprise D to salute that. So tell us about the book, Doctor. What did you glean in your speed read from it?
Yeah, I made a couple of it. Well,
Did you read it in its entirety?
Yeah,
How long did that take?
a couple hours.
Wow, that's amazing.
It's how many pages is it?
I'll tell you what.
I mean, obviously,
I watched the episode in a couple hours, so there you go.
I mean, obviously, when you've seen the episode, your imagination, you're filling in very little because you've seen what it looks like. So it's easier to read something like this. But what's interesting is that the author, who's Michael Jen Friedman, who's one of the top Star Trek writers of all time, he makes a real effort to bring in other characters that it would have been nice if they could have made a cameo, since this was the series finale. We actually see Alexander in a scene after Worf is done with the date.
In the book,
Troy.
Alexander comes out. You're saying that's cool.
Yeah, in the book, Worf has a conversation with Alexander about Troy and says, "Hey, are you?" Because Alexander kind of teases him, like, "Oh, you've just seen Troy, haven't you?" And he's like, "How do you know?" And it's like, "Oh, well, because you're smiling." And Worf is like, "I am not smiling." And then Alexander's like, "I know when you're smiling, even when you think you're not smiling." And
that's sweet. That's also very apropos of them. Very cool.
And Alexander actually says that he's fine because Worf, one of the things that he carries with him is that he saw his mother killed in front of him, so he carries that horrible memory with him, and so him dealing with any other woman, obviously there's his feelings to think of as well, and Alexander's okay with it. So that's a very nice scene. And then the scene I think that really stands out to me in the book is they go to Wesley back on the planet where we last saw him with the Traveler, and they both sense something is wrong in the universe. At first it's just the Traveler, but then Wesley, and it's weird because it almost echoes Empire Strikes Back. Wesley and the Traveler have a very Luke Yoda-like conversation. It was like, but I have to help my friends. They're my friends. And Yoda's like,
no. Interesting. That would have also given us a nice connection to why Wesley's in Nemesis. A lot of people just wonder what, he kind of pops in and everything's all good. And it would have been interesting if
just pop in. It's like he's finished his Starfleet Academy training.
Yeah. But the book gives a lot of scope. It touches base with a lot of characters that are not in the televised story. We even see Pulaski and Troy's mom. They share a scene together because they've heard about the Enterprise being deployed to the neutral zone. So there's a lot of anxiety about what's going on in the neutral zone.
That is really
cool. There's so I mean I really recommend the book. If you like the episode, I can't recommend the book enough. And then in terms of the future stuff, the alternate timeline, there's memories of the wedding between Picard and Crusher, and Wesley is present there, and Robert is there. So Sean, you were saying earlier, I think it was Rob or Sahel. I don't know who said that
Renee.
nephew Renee is still alive. In fact, yes, in this alternate timeline, there is no fire at Chateau Picard, and no
It
one
seems
is
like
killed.
a better timeline.
In some ways, it does.
That's like my biggest thing that I kind of like love.
The only thing better in the timeline that we have up until this point, like with Star Trek Picard and everything, is that like Riker and Troy got together, I suppose.
I don't know if you guys find
She
this
didn't
interesting,
die?
but I don't know if you guys find this interesting or not, but if you were to, I see Star Trek Picard as in an odd way as very much connected to this episode, All Good Things, in the sense that like All Good Things postulated or gave us a glimpse at what the future for these characters would be like. And I find it really cool and interesting that season 1 of Picard chose the one thing that was like wrong with one of the big things that was wrong with the future is that one of them died, which had never happened before. Like I thought that was unfathomable, right? Like that we would have you think of all of them as like immortal, and in fact, the original series crew got to sign off all of them, not just the crew, but the actors themselves were all there. And thank goodness we have all the actors still for TNG, but the characters themselves had all lived to the end of their mission, so to speak. They got to sign off. They got to have, I'm all big on these endings. I love endings. I love like Return of the Jedi. It's my favorite of the Star Wars movies. It's not the ending anymore, but still at one time it was the ending. And I really loved Return of the Jedi. And just like that, this episode was once the ending for a little while of Star Trek: The Next Generation, or of the Star Trek story in and of itself. And I always thought it was sad or tragic that we would lose Troy. And so I thought that one of the coolest things about Picard is that we actually end up not losing Troy. And I wonder like how cool, I wonder if there's any, I would love to talk to like Michael Chabon or the other writers, because I wonder if there was an intention of putting, I know that people say that Riker and Troy were a last minute decision to include them, but it just turns out so that it kind of in a lovely way, it parallels what we see in the future in All Good Things. It's like, oh, here we go. The answer to the question of what really happened starts with Troy and Riker. They didn't die, but they still had tragedy in their life. So there's these like fatalistic things that kind of come into play that really intrigue me as just like a viewer and a person who loves stories.
Well, I mean, obviously we've had the movie, we had the movie right away, Generations.
Yeah, we also knew it was going to come. Like, I didn't feel like when I saw All Good Things when it originally aired, it didn't feel like an ending. It just felt like a nice ending note for the TV version of Star Trek: The Next Generation.
Right, but we did have this future that was given to us. I mean, did any of you feel up until Picard that was the future?
I always wondered if that would be the future, but I never thought, because they knew their future, because Jean-Luc told them what the future was going to be like, that in itself always told me that it was going to be different from what we saw.
I agree. It is nice to kind of have I never felt like this alternate version of the future was the correct future. It's always been like an alternate timeline, or like a side timeline. It's like, these are possible events, but they don't actually happen. Now that we've seen Star Trek Picard, it helps that feeling or that sentiment kind of be more grounded. It helps it kind of sit in stone, right? It's like you're talking about Riker and Troy. Now you can kind of, Star Trek Picard in a way kind of complements this episode, in the sense that you're like, okay, so Picard told them all about what happens in the future, and he tells them probably about how Worf and Deanna had this relationship. Deanna died. He tells them about how Worf and Riker were estranged, and so you can kind of assume that that's what led them to have these different choices in their lives. And it actually helps Deep Space Nine in the sense that, like, when Worf went to Deep Space Nine, he kind of forgot about Deanna. It was like, I'm moving away from this. I'm moving away from this timeline, because
that's very powerful.
If I really love her, I don't want her to die, right? I don't want that.
Right.
Timeline
That's actually very powerful. I never even thought of that layer, but that's an excellent point, that like it has far-reaching implications when you see how the story actually did pan out, because everything from this point on is the real future, including Deep Space Nine. it was pointed out on Memory Alpha that this is a rare occurrence in TV history because the actor who plays Tomlock played a character on Babylon 5 for a while now, and actually Babylon 5 was still running, and he's on Star Trek, and also Colmini was fully on Deep Space Nine, and he comes back. So it's like this episode of TNG was like pretty epic in the sense that it brought these characters back. And I didn't even mention Tomahawk in the summary. I'm sorry, I forgot to talk about
the Avengers Endgame of Star Trek.
It's kind of. A lot of people say that Avengers Endgame get the kind of mechanics of that story and how they shift through time was somehow influenced by or based on
Kevin Feige said that
this episode as well. So maybe
it inspired them.
It's possible that Kevin Feige, if you're watching this, that you've also seen this episode 100 times.
I think he was very much talking about the way that, because people were all worried about who's going to die in Avengers Endgame, which characters might not come back, and what have you. And at one point, Kevin Feige kind of said that characters don't have to die to bookend a story necessarily. Like he says it doesn't have to be tragic or what have you. And then he referred back to All Good Things, and he said one of the best finales that we know is All Good Things. And as we know, Picard doesn't die; he joins the crew, right, on the game. So, yeah, I think they were inspired, kind of like by they're all big nerds anyway, aren't they?
Mm-hmm. I guess it's true. And another interesting twist of fate, we get, and now that Picard again. I really was hoping in a way to finish these discussions before we saw Picard, because I really wanted the purist in me wanted to just talk fully about All Good Things and TNG, but life happens and we couldn't do that. So I absolutely have to talk about Picard because to me, it's so integrally linked to this episode because, I don't mean to cut the films out, but this is Star Trek and these characters' stories continuing on television, new television, but television nonetheless, which is a totally different presentation from cinema. Like we've gotten a story told, a movie style story told over 10 episodes, like it or not. It's very interesting. But the other thing is we get an alternate fate for Data, which is actually delightful. Like it makes me more sad to see what happened to Data, what ends up happening to Data, in actuality, when I see that he could have been the Lucasian chair that at Cambridge University, like to me that means a lot to me for that character, and I just love that that's where he ended up. And it's just so heartbreaking that what actually happens to Data is that he ends up in it's what's better?
It's better that he dies.
As a character, or in terms of the story?
In terms of everything. It's better for us, the audience. It's better for the story. It's better for him, the character, because it fulfills his dream. He becomes as human as possible with his sacrifice. Whereas here, he's just sitting on a chair where usually someone would retire or die, but he won't. So he'll just keep that chair forever.
That's true.
It is. Isn't it implied though that he has his emotions though, or no? Not. I forget. I don't know why I'm confusing it, but I could have sworn there's a scene where Geordi refers to something and Data does achieve some level of advancement. Like he's a more advanced Data than ever. But I do think that like it is interesting that like this iteration of Star Trek The Next Generation has actual loss in it. In both this episode of All Good Things with the loss of Troy, and then in real life Star Trek with the loss of Data, right? Like I think it is interesting that that we lose someone, and it is sad. I think Data's fate is sad, actually. I find it to be very melancholy. I think that Data kind of represented a thing that because he's such
joyous about his death.
No, I know, but you said it's good.
About it. No, but I think it's good on like every storytelling level, right?
Yes, it is good. You're right. No, 100%. It is.
I also like finality to characters, and I don't necessarily want characters to die, but I like it when like I would like it if sometimes you could say, well, this character retired on this planet and he lived out his life. And that's just what happened. And it's like, I don't like the whole we have to drag people back, we have to bring, or like Data died, but no, we kept his consciousness somewhere, what have you. Like, I like it when things end.
Next Generation just likes death, because even Captain Kirk dies on Star Trek: The Next Generation technically. If you think about it. So Next Generation's the game of, before Game of Thrones, Next Generation was killing off mains like nothing. Like it's just like boom, boom, boom.
Kill that Tasha,
let's kill Tasha
Right.
Yar. We did it in season 2. We could kill Data. We can kill Captain, and we're gonna kill Captain Kirk. That's it. It's true.
They didn't kill Captain Kirk. They brought him back to life, technically.
And then killed him.
And then killed him.
They killed him twice, actually, in the same movie.
Right. Yeah.
They gave him a second chance. He was able to make a difference.
He was.
Let me throw out another question at you guys.
I have a question regarding the book, by the way.
Go ahead.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but these novelizations from movies, traditionally movies, and these two-parters are kind of movies, aren't they? So these novelizations, all of this added information, Pulaski talking to, Loxana, does that come from like official script notes or like an official script draft or an outline that they had? Or is that at the liberty of the person writing the novelization? Can they like add in the details that they want?
I believe they add in details that they want. Sometimes, in some cases, the the person who has novelized the story is also the screenwriter. In which case, they're adding maybe ideas that were shot down, and they add it to the novel because it wasn't. It didn't come to fruition in the script or the televised story. But in this case, this is an author who did not, had nothing to do with the story, and he is taking it upon himself to sort of add more to the pot, and it's really well done. I really recommend it. Like I said, Barclay is featured. It shows what Barclay's doing on the ship during all this.
What does he do? What is Barclay doing?
He's actually very nervous about the Romulans. There's more of a feeling of dread at the present day Enterprise being shipped out to the neutral zone. There's this feeling of like, oh my God, what does this mean? Why are there a dozen Romulan ships heading there? So
is the
Guinan, yes, that's what I didn't write that down. But yeah, Picard has it's. I mean, what else
can
you
feel
write?
This temporal stuff, right?
And Picard shows up in 10 Forward, and she's actually counseling Barclay as well. Barclay gets counseled by Troy. Barclay is just like a
nervous
bundle of
wreck.
nerves. Yeah, he's having a whole like breakdown.
That's what we all.
Right. So Guinan, Picard approaches Guinan, and Guinan basically, Picard is like, what's happening? Yes. Q is involved? Yes. Can you tell me what do I do? No. The conversation is basically, she says to him,
so enigmatic.
You have to figure it out, and only you can figure it out, is basically what she tells him. Now, on a side note, I will say this, and this is something that
this is present timeline or future?
Present.
Okay.
Present. In the past timeline, we see Troy and Tasha meet for the first time, their actual first encounter. And Troy reveals that it was her idea to have 10 Forward built into the Enterprise, which I thought was really bizarre. I don't know why a counselor would have input into the design of a starship, but that there's a whole conversation about that, and
it supports
Tasha
this idea.
Go ahead.
It supports this idea that the Enterprise is actually extremely modular, and it could be that like they can do that kind of stuff in the future. That's the other thing. Again, I really love the Enterprise D for
I
that
like
reason.
the idea of the Galaxy class ship being modular, right? Like you have like the basic schematics for Galaxy class, and then you as the captain or as the designer or as maybe a person involved in the construction of that particular ship say, oh, I want my Galaxy class ship to have this or that. Kind of like sometimes you can you have houses built. You have a house, they have basic schematics or basic blueprint.
What does that say about Jean-Luc's aesthetic plush carpet on the wall?
He didn't even know about the ship before he got there.
Right.
That's true.
He just rolled up like, oh, this is the ship.
Is it?
This is it.
That's
Where's my aquarium?
Where's my fish?
They're on there.
Just rolls up this fish in the plastic bag. I need a place to put this.
I do wish we had seen visitation ops, which I love. Yes. It's one of my favorite things since I was a kid about this.
Whales and dolphins, man. Where are the whales?
Talk about it in the book.
The whales and the dolphins? No, not in this book. No.
Okay.
No, sadly,
Mike McMahon, I know you're watching. You have to put whales and dolphins in lower decks. You have to do this.
They have to be on there.
Absolutely have to do. Absolutely. You have to do that one crossover episode where they go to the Enterprise. You don't even have to show any of the main characters. Just like have them interact with O'Brien and Barclay or something. But then they go pick up a dolphin.
What's the name of the ship? The USS. Is it
for lower decks?
Yeah, they named it already. It's the USS.
Yeah, they dropped the name.
It'd be cool if it's all I have to say is that it'd be really cool if it was a Galaxy class starship.
He's not watching, by the way. Mike McMahon. I say he is, but he probably isn't.
He might be. Well, we have quite a few industry people who watch this podcast. It's considered very niche. So it's very possible that he is watching. And if you are, shout out to you. We're so excited about Lower Decks.
Now, I want to ask you guys a question. At the end of the episode, Q compliments Picard on finally achieving a greater sense of whatever. Oh, you're transcending appreciate, right?
He basically is saying like you were able to think, four-dimensionally, actually, not just out of the box. Yeah.
Okay, can you explain how you interpret what exactly did Picard do that was so extraordinary that it prompted Q to compliment him? Like, what exactly is the trick that Picard learned? What did Picard learn from this? What I think away from this?
What I think he learned is that, what I think it kind of always boils down to when it comes to Star Trek is that like sacrificing oneself is always going to lead to the preservation of one's people or society or life, in general. So Jean-Luc makes but he does it in a way that's kind of more profound. I think he decides at one point that like all of it's expendable. Like he just focuses 100% on the anomaly and making sure it shrinks. And he's like, he knows that his beloved crew in 3 different timelines is going to basically die, and he does it anyways. And I think for him, he realizes in the fact that he's able to travel seamlessly through these 3 timelines and integrate so well that human consciousness perhaps exists in a state that's outside of the limitations of a galaxy or a universe or whatever you want to, in fact, I think he realized in a way that he has as much power as the Q to control the fate of the universe. And so he just in that moment he seamlessly, and that's where the episode kind of that editing I talked about, it just clicks. He seamlessly like is traveling through these 3 timelines, gathering the fates of all 3 of these different universes, if you will, to this one point, and is able to completely save all three of these, at least completely save humanity in all three of these universes.
Well, okay, no, but he doesn't save the
He does.
Okay.
He saves the universe. He saves humanity.
The future timeline doesn't
It's
happen,
where it's
though.
no, but it
I
does
have an
now.
equally long answer for you that will also not very well answer your question.
Okay.
I want to
Give me
hear
your
it.
answer.
Yeah, let's
Okay.
hear it.
Please.
Watching this now as an adult, with a full comprehension of what's going on, and living in the world in an era of modern Star Trek, I realized that this episode has the faults of many of the modern Star Trek. It is about the end of the galaxy or the end of like the entire human race. Nothing really happens, and no one really does anything. I've also written down that's the data that I remember, which is it's a hard sentiment to explain, but they always do this for nostalgic purposes. Like one character will act a certain way when they acted in the show, like in Star Trek Picard, a character will act a certain way when they acted in Next Generation, and then you'll have to have this on-screen reminder, like this dialogue reminder that, oh, this is how the character used to be. Oh, that's the data that I remember. And so All Good Things is doing this. Anyway, so my equally long answer is that ultimately I feel like no one really does anything in this episode.
Wait, but what do you think?
It does feel like modern Star Trek, very, very much.
What do you think Hugh's saying though? What the doctor's asking? Like, how does Picard transcend his human condition? Like,
He's
how does
not
he
saying it because of logic or reason. He's saying it because the plot kind of demanded him to. The writers wanted Q to say, "Good boy, Picard.
Right.
You're the boss. You passed the test." And so that's it. That's what they want.
So you're saying the episode doesn't deliver, unlike
Not
I
really.
see, in the sense like you don't see what Jean-Luc did to transcend. I think
Not
that's.
I appreciate
not-
all of the moments. I appreciate the seeing of the alternate timelines. I appreciate the characters, and I appreciate the kind of tie-ins and the nods to previous things. I also appreciate it more now. As we talked about the Riker and Deanna relationship, and I appreciate it for what comes after now, just as much. But yeah, I mean the story wraps up. It's not like the story doesn't wrap up. It's just like he doesn't feel like the heroic character, Picard.
Really,
I don't feel like he deserves the Q praise.
You just
Especially considering it's a bit strange. It's like it's not even a thing that would have happened. It's kind of like Q did all this.
The anomaly was going to happen. The anomaly was going to happen anyways because in three parallel timelines, the Enterprise converges on this location and simultaneously activates a scan, which in turn creates a destination paradox. And I think that's what Q actually says in the episode. It's like when you realized it was a paradox, that's when you transcended. That moment when Picard realizes it is a paradox, is when he transcends this like 2-dimensional or 3-dimensional thinking that humans are only capable of, and he transcends into a 4-dimensional. But it's so science fiction. It's so Star Trek.
But I know, but think about it. There are an infinite amount of parallel timelines going on at once because Data explained this. Data explained that in Star Trek, every time you make a decision, it splits into 2, and then so you've got an infinite amount. Well,
physicists think there's a popular and very like it's a leading theory in physics that occurs also, like that. Okay. That every decision creates infinite collapse timelines. That where everything could have happened.
Assuming this is the fact that we're going on. What we're saying here is in 3 of these infinite amount of timelines, 3 Enterprises arrive at the same place and do the same scan. And then so this thing begins. That would be happening all over the galaxy all the time.
Not necessarily.
It's very naive to imagine that other ships running scans as well wouldn't in infinite amounts of timelines run the same scan. Like
it may
kinda
be
strange.
it may be
I feel
naive,
like
but it's
Q just
also
did it.
well within the realm of probability. I mean, I think we can argue, we can get really nerdy about this and start arguing
Yeah,
about
but I feel
probabilistics
like
and things like that.
Q
But
initiated this.
he says, according to the episode, Q says the only thing he's initiated is having Jean-Luc travel between these three universes. But
That's in the yes or no questions.
right, but
But
he
in
asks
the
him,
end,
"Are you responsible?" But he says, "Are you responsible for the anomaly?" And Q says, "No, you are." Like that's the whole point. Is that like Picard has to realize
that's a
that
Q
he's
answer though.
yeah, but it's
The continuum could be responsible,
Okay, but
because Picard la di da.
right, but here's my question though: is to get a compliment from Q, it means that he's accomplished something that he's never done before. And watching this episode, I feel Picard has figured out things much tougher than this episode. So what I don't understand is why is this a test? I mean, when we get,
I think that
an encounter at Farpoint, when Picard figures out that the jellyfish and all that stuff, like in that episode, I feel we truly get a test, and we get Picard being handed the clues and him figuring out because it's the thing's mate or whatever. And
The problem is, I
The
think
the
because
reason
it's the same Picard in the three timelines. If it had been three separate Picards that each have one piece of like the puzzle and never come into contact, but they were able to figure it out, the three of them, each Picard separately, are able to kind of come up with their own piece of the puzzle, and then it's resolved. That would be amazing.
the thing Picard had not done up until this point is, which we know he's willing to do, but the thing he
Sacrifice
had
the
not is just to sacrifice it all, not just the ship, like everyone, like knowing he always tries really hard to save the day, kind of to save everyone, to make sure that no one, like that's his whole thing. I mean, any good captain, right? But here he has no choice. He knows that like the only way to stop this anomaly is
are
to
you saying this
sacrifice
is the Kubarashi Maru?
This is the Kobayashi Maru.
So you're saying Picard's never been in a situation before this episode
That he hasn't won. He's won every situation that he's ever been in.
But he's
been
willing. He's certainly been willing.
I didn't say that it's not about the willingness. It's actually about
why does that impress the Q? I don't understand why that impresses the Q.
No, there's two factors at play. There's two things that the Q of course expected Picard to do a sacrifice, but where the sacrifice is meaningful to the Q is that Picard does it based solely on an intuition and an awareness of a fourth dimensional existence, like a way of seeing beyond just your own. He uses his connection to these other two universes and stops thinking that they might be. The whole episode, everyone's like, this might be in your head, you might be imagining this. It's the advanced aromatic syndrome. The crew of the present is like even a little bit like they're more behind him, but they're more like, ultimately it's like Picard leads all these people in these different points to the same fate, and he's able to do that. And I think that's because he's so convinced and so certain of what needs to be done, and he does it. The original, the encounter at Farpoint perspective, those people are like, what the fuck are we doing? But they end up following Picard anyways. And it's that charisma, it's that leadership, it's that thing that he does where it doesn't matter if he's known the crew. If Jean-Luc Picard, it doesn't matter if he's known you for like 5 minutes or if he's known you for 7 years, you're going to follow him into the anomaly. I would argue
the past timeline crew, the encounter at Farpoint crew, follow him because he's the captain. I would argue they are absolutely against.
But think about how many times there's. But it takes it. But crews have autonomy. I mean, we've seen mutinies before. Like they could have certainly been like, "Sir, this is so bizarre. We don't know why you're doing this." But they do. You're right. They do follow him.
They don't even have their first officer there yet.
It's because it's who he is. He gives. he gives in that speech to Tasha when Tasha actually questions him, and she's like, why we don't get your things, and he gives that like wonderful speech about like, I know what you're capable of. To like think about like what he's doing in that moment. He's like, I just think that's the powerful thing, that like he uses his knowledge of the future, even though it may not be real, to influence his past. And that's the part that I think where a normal human couldn't have done that. I think that's what shows Q that like, oh, humans are capable of more than just thinking of their present place perspective. And I would also argue that even Jean-Luc, who's always like, the future can be written, in a way he kind of like, he's always like the future can be rewritten, like, you're make your future what you want it to be. But in this case, in this situation, he has to like kind of like, in all three of these timelines, he has to be like, no, this is the future, this is my destiny, this is the destiny of all of us, it has to end this way. And it's kind of like a powerful thing. I don't know, there's a private chat here. Let me see what the Cerritos.
I just sent the name of the lower decks ship we were looking for.
Gotcha.
I don't know. I have to confess, I think one of the flaws in the episode is I am not convinced by. I appreciate what they're trying to do. They're trying to achieve a symmetry where there was a test in Encounter at Farpoint, and then there's another test here, and Picard passes it. I understood the test in Encounter at Farpoint, in the sense that I saw how it all the plot came together, and I understand what he did to pass it. In this one, I feel that the plot kind of gets muddled a bit, and it gets very obsessed with the, going back through the timelines, which is great. I do love the idea of Picard, commanding the three different enterprises, but then ultimately, when the enterprises start exploding, I'm not really understanding what he achieves and why. I don't think the episode, to me at least, it didn't convey what exactly he achieved that was so noteworthy that the Q are like, okay, you're good. You achieved something here extraordinary. I feel there have been previous episodes where Picard has figured things out just as complex. And as a matter of fact, I'm sitting here and I'm thinking, when you were talking about all the things he's figuring out, Crusher in the Bottle Universe episode, where she actually is like, if there's nothing wrong with the ship, there must be something wrong with the universe. That, I think, shows a remarkable ability to think out of the box, that, hey, it's not just me, it's the whole universe that's wrong. So I think other characters throughout the show have encountered conundrums that are just as complex, and
I don't
you
think
don't have Q showing up saying, wow, you did good. You know what I'm saying?
I think if we're gonna go like, pound for pound comparing the two situations, I'm glad you mentioned another instance, and of course we love Dr. Crusher on this show, so that's great that you did that. But if we're gonna go pound for pound, I mean, like, just on paper alone, like, you're talking about the fate of like humanity, you're talking about three universes, like, you're thinking from like your big perspective of now having seen like all of Star Trek. But at that time, I would argue that this was like the end game of Star Trek. Like, this is the biggest thing that had happened.
I'm saying on the show, on just the show, just Next Generation.
But even on Next Generation, I can't think of something as epic as this conundrum was. I think this is the most, for TNG the show, this was the culm. I disagree that I think they've all done extraordinary things in the past. I don't know why I said it like that, in the past. I think they've all done extraordinary things in the past, but I think that this was indeed the most up to this point extraordinary thing that they had done. Of course, now in Star Trek Picard, he's transcended existence in a more profound way, I think, than he did in this episode. I do think that becoming a synthetic life form is bizarre and far out. And if Q's gonna come back and throw any more compliments, it has to be at Jean-Luc for surprising everyone.
Well, you can't put Jean-Luc on trial for humanity anymore. He's not really human, is he?
He's not a human anymore.
There we go.
He's a Soong type android too.
I'm gonna be real. I'm gonna follow up what you guys said, but I'm gonna be real. I'm gonna be real abstract about this. All right.
Go for it. I love
when I watch a love story, like a romantic movie. I don't judge it the same way. I don't kind of rate it the same way as I will rate Alien. Right? They have two completely different purposes. They have completely different objectives, and so they relate to me in different ways. Now, I could go pound for pound and say, "Oh, this is better. This is more logic. This is what have you," but it would be completely nonsensical to do this. And I think that this episode, the All Good Things episode, cannot be compared to, for example, the Crusher universe coming in on her episode, and it can't be compared to something like Inner Light. This episode has the singular purpose of being a bookend to the Next Generation, in the same way Avengers Endgame was supposed to be a bookend to the Avengers. And so the objective of the story was not, and I might be wrong, but I don't think it was to make sense. I think the story, what you're looking for, what you're complaining about, they didn't even try that. It was like, well, we'll make it work, but it doesn't have to. We don't have to tie in all the logic points like we usually do. What we want to do here is give the spectacle and the farewell to a show. And so when you watch Avengers Endgame, sometimes the timelines, you're like, does this work? Does it really work? But it doesn't matter because you get America's ass, right? You get, you know what I mean? You get like Captain fighting Captain. You get all of these.
We get America's ass.
You get the fight. You get the. I was talking more about the way he looks at America's ass and says it rather than the actual ass, right? But and this is the same thing. You get you get the data from the future, and you get to see Tasha Yar on the shuttle with Picard, and they see the Enterprise and what have you, and it's all about that kind of spectacle. And I think that's what the episode. Yeah, that's what the episode is trying to accomplish. And so I judge it and I rate it based on what it was setting out to do. It did that very well. I would say that some episodes of Star Trek set out to be like romantic stories and they fail miserably. And
Speaking
so like
of romance,
I always judge on what they want to do, what they want to accomplish, right?
Speaking of romance, even though I've seen this episode 100 times, I completely forgot, because the last time I'd seen this episode before this,
I didn't remember that either.
I completely forgot that in
Crusher.
Prime Timeline,
Yeah.
Jean-Luc and
Crusher, I forgot
and
that.
Crusher make out on screen. They have their kiss.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. It surprised me when I was like, oh my god, they did that.
Why did I forget that?
That is one of the things that pisses me off more now, because she doesn't exist in Star Trek Picard. She has to come back.
Come on, that's unfair. We haven't seen.
Back.
She does.
I hope
she has to come back.
I hope they don't one day like just drop a line about how she died.
They can't. They're not gonna. We're not gonna get that, Sean. No one's that cruel. No one's that unusual. If it happens, I will get crazy.
Oh, you'll get mad.
Yes, I'll get down with this. You'll actually
see the full.
You'll see something else. You'll see Darth Starfleet Boy is what you'll see. That'll be the moment that I fell. That'll be the moment. That'll be the moment where Star Trek cuts my legs and my arms off, throws me in lava, and makes me become Darth Starfleet Boy. That's what he'll have. That's like
this is where he'll start his channel, not Star Trek.
That's when
not my Star Trek.
If you guys thought Doomcock, if you guys thought Doomcock was horrible, if you just do Beverly like that, you're in for something more. You're in for worse things than Doomcock. I'm just warning.
I believe that.
Doctor's afraid now.
Yeah. No, we don't want to open that door.
Please, Star Trek.
I've seen. Yeah, no. No.
Mr.
You've
Curtin.
seen
Beverly lived.
The Doctor's been to the future. He's been to the
He's seen it. He's
anti-time
seen the
time
alternate timeline.
Yeah.
where Beverly dies and he sees what happens. It's not a pretty picture. No,
It's
I'll-
not.
I appreciate the
I
episode
can't
for what it is.
what that I did.
Coming back to this episode, let's not talk about Beverly's fake death. I appreciate this episode for what it is. It's not. You're searching for why Q loves and respects Picard. He's got a crush on him. That's it. Q has a crush on Picard, and there's this issue. He solves it, and he's like,
Data says in
boss.
this episode though
That's it.
a funny line where he's like, where Jean-Luc is kind of telling, he's like, he views you as a pet. It's so true.
See, this is the kind of comedy that's great. The O'Brien Data thing.
I got to
That's
take a
funny as
moment.
well.
That was
in engineering.
Yes.
I've been, there's no money in the future in Starfleet and in the Federation, but I happen to have a Ferengi broker who helped me procure these cameos for different people. And the Martian, or AKA Ruben, who's been a guest on this show, I bought him one from John Delancey. And I think you guys have you guys seen this one? The audience hasn't seen it on here. So I'm going to play John Delancey because it's appropriate for all good things. This is a message.
Get muted, or can we talk over him? No, we get muted.
It's muted. So here we go. This is John Delancey.
Ruben, a.k.a. the Martian, you sorry piece of shit. What are you doing imitating me? I mean, come on. Did you do well? Did they think you were an asshole? Did they hope that you would, disappear down some wormhole? Because if they did, you did a good job. Good for you. Good for you. So, you have been friends since you were, in third grade? I love it. I love that type of friendship. I have a couple of friends. I have one friend in particular that I ended up meeting when I was 1.5 years old. I am a lot older now, and we are still in touch. And we actually developed sort of a sense of humor, which is really peculiar to just the two of us. And our wives kind of throw their eyes up in the air. But the two of us just think that we're the funniest things in the world. Well, with that, bravo. Keep it up. Good for you. Cheers.
John Delancey just gave Ruben permission to be a dick on Starfleet Boy. So
that was the old format, though. We're moving into the new format.
That's right.
It's true.
It's all erased.
Go ahead. I have to say that because I didn't comment on the show, the previous cameo by Davis. Now, he came up with all that on his own. You said, right? That was
not prompted by me.
He created his own episode on Star Trek Picard, and that's genius. I was so floored by that. I was just amazed by that
Twitter,
whole thing.
I always ask our boy Starfleet Boy here how much he scripts and how much he doesn't, and they're great. These guys,
It's amazing. He was amazing.
These performers are in general, but that's why I love Star Trek. One of the reasons, but and John Delancey, I just gave him a few facts, and I think Cameo is wonderful. I'm not here to give any unsolicited plugs, but by the way, Twitter agrees with you because I posted that I was too excited and I couldn't wait to debut it here. So I posted it on Twitter, and I've only had 3 tweets that went over 1,000 likes and something like 400 shares or whatever. It was out of control, but almost unanimously everyone said that's a great idea. There's the comments were all like, this is awesome, we want to see Moriarty back in Picard, and we're hoping, Starfleet Boy that is, was hoping that Sir Patrick himself would have seen that tweet. So we don't know, but we hope that he sees it.
We should have all retweeted to him.
Yeah, you tweet things at people.
I mean, it's still getting retweeted and commented on and liked. So there's
maybe someone will pick it up eventually.
Someone might pick it up. It's very possible. But that was a cool for me. Indeed, it was a very cool moment.
You will have helped instigate an episode of Star Trek Picard.
If it happens, that would be so
If
awesome.
it happens, yeah.
That would be amazing.
That
But that rarely happens. As we know, if you talk about it, it likely won't happen. So unfortunately, I may have actually ruined the chances of that episode happening.
No, this is different. This is different because he, the performer, came up with the plot.
Yeah,
so maybe they can find a way to. It wasn't us.
It's true. It's true. Speaking of which, Sean, I'm lobbying hardcore for a 10 from both of you on this episode.
Oh God!
You tried.
I just want to remind you and the audience that I paid good money to have Marina Sirtis yell at you to bring that up again.
Hi, Sean. This is Marina Sirtis, and I got a message from Sukhail, aka Starfleet Boy, that you guys do a Star Trek podcast, and apparently you gave the first episode of Picard an 8 out of 10. Really? An 8? I think you're being a little mean. They have to set the stage for the series in episode 1, but just the look of it and Sir Patrick's performance deserve a 10. So consider yourself chastised, Sean. Over and out.
So I'm moving that message to this episode.
Picard never got a 10, Marina. I'm so sorry.
Poor Marina Sirtis put effort into that message to chide you. No, I'm just kidding.
But Marina Sirtis was in episode what?
8.
Well, that got a 10.
No, he didn't give that either. No. He didn't give Nepenthe a 10.
Oh wow, you're tough.
Nepenthe was what?
He tweeted to Marina Sirtis, "I'm saving my 10s for Nepenthe," and then
it wasn't. But I'll tell you what, I gave it an 8.5, which is the highest of all of the Picard ratings.
And I think Humbert agrees with you. He gave Nepenthe the highest score.
Yeah.
Of the whole series too.
Yeah.
Can I share the cameo I sent to you, Doctor?
There was not enough Marina Sirtis. There was too much other people.
There's one more cameo I ordered, which was
that's what happened
for the Doctor, and I don't think Sean has seen. I don't know if Sean has seen this.
Oh, is this I haven't seen this one.
This one's an exclusive. So here we go. Let me do this. Here we go.
I thought it was more important.
Humbert, hi. It's Jonathan Frakes, Commander Riker, from Star Trek: The Next Generation. This is a message for you, Humbert, a.k.a. the Doctor, from Sohail, a.k.a. Starfleet Boy. He would like to thank you for being such a great friend and for starting a journey with him 4 years ago that has meant the world to him. He's so happy. And he's so grateful that you're completing that journey. May you both live long and prosper. Stay safe, social distance, wear the mask. Thank you, Humbert. That's from Starfleet Boy and from me. Enjoy.
I love that he does the
wow.
There, now I've officially embarrassed Humbert on screen.
That's wonderful.
And we've cataloged it. I think it's interesting that and I love it that all of the performers who I got cameos from during this period mention what we're going through in real life. Could you imagine 4 years ago when we started this journey, I had no idea that we'd be doing our final discussion of Star Trek: The Next Generation. First of all, we couldn't have imagined Sean, so that's a delight.
That's right. We didn't know Sean when we started all this.
We couldn't have imagined
Sean. Right.
The Trek on the Tube, it was a twinkle in our eyes at that point. And then here we are together to do this.
Existing.
We talked about your existing. We talked about it in the first episode. We talked about all good things in the very first discussion of Starfleet Boy. We're here in that moment 4 years later, and the world is a very strange place. Especially now, this week in particular has been a very difficult week on top of humanity going through the pandemic. There's a lot of unrest at the moment. And violence and things like that. And so, we're not here to, for better or for worse, we're not here to go and dive deep into the particulars of those things on Starfleet Boy. We're focused on Star Trek, but nevertheless, we are living in strange times, and I do appreciate that all the performers who gave those cameos mentioned social distancing and keeping everyone safe. And I think, it's kind of like there is an existential crisis happening right now in real life to all of us. And to me, it gives me solace to watch shows like Star Trek, whatever that warm blanket, as Gary likes to refer to, is for you. And All Good Things is particularly, for me, the blanket on top of my Star Trek experience. I lay in my Star Trek bed. So yeah, we're still not ready to give to give ratings.
Well, to piggyback on what you just said, I Star Trek represents hope for the future, and what we're going through right now, with the racism and everything. Star Trek gives us a vision of a future where that is gone, where we get past our petty differences and divisions, and we achieve a dream of going beyond the Earth, which is another thing that's happening in the background of all this, is SpaceX and we're trying to get. We've
been going out in space, but we haven't gone to Mars yet. But that's on the horizon. I think it's
right. So, oddly enough, the current situation echoes what was going on in the background of the original series. We had unrest, we had the civil rights movement going on, and we were going to space, and that was in the news. So I just thought to myself, wow, this is history repeating. But we have to break from the repeat of history. We have to forge forward and learn our lessons. And I was saying, what does Picard learn? What is it that impresses Q so much? And maybe what he learns is what, like you were saying, learning, gleaming from the different timelines, the lessons learned to forge forward a bold new future, one where the crew stays together, he stays more in touch with them. And what I'm hoping is that hopefully humanity as a whole will learn lessons so we can get a Star Trek like future. And I think that's the ultimate takeaway from Star Trek and from any good episode of Next Generation or any Star Trek show is hope for the future, and that we can do it. Humanity can do it.
Beautifully said. To wrap up kind of the discussion portion, I do like to go back and look at the kind of things that Memory Alpha or the book says was going on in the production, Larry Nemechek's book, The Star Trek Companion, and find out what was going on. And one of the most interesting things that I read was that both Brandon Braga and Ron Moore wrote the story for All Good Things, and it's pretty cool because both of them are they each have their own kind of shows that they contributed post Star Trek, right? We have Battlestar Galactica, which was Ron Moore's show, and Brandon Braga is currently involved with the Orville, and
Ron Moore is involved with Outlander, which features somebody who's traveling through time. Which is,
Brandon Braga or Ron Moore, I can't remember, is also involved in an Apple TV Plus show that paints an alternate timeline of the moon landing. What if Russia had gotten? So there's a lot of interesting things that they keep exploring. But I would say that, like, personally, we're not here to. I don't know if this. I don't know what the general sentiment is. Is that this episode of Star Trek is like kind of a sweet ending to a TV show, and I don't see that again. I didn't get that again until Battlestar Galactica, which again Ron Moore, where I think that's the only other time where I thought the series end kind of like was just like a perfect ending. It doesn't really,
Deep Space Nine.
It's not as perfect as this to me. There's still the 8th season. This is what I'll say, and it's backed up by the fact that the writers also wanted an 8th season. I feel like there was an 8th season of Deep Space Nine. I think Deep Space Nine is a profound and it's powerful ending, but I think that to me this was like a sweet ending, like a really good, kind of like ending to a show that like just kind of answered everything. Like it just kind of hit every note for me. I was not left wanting. In fact, I was 16 years old, and it was like when this aired, I was so sad that it ended, but it was also very satisfactory. And I remember it was 16. I must have been going into the 10th grade, and is that the 10th grade or the 11th grade? No, it was just like to me, it still has that same sweetness to this day of like hitting every note. But they originally were kind of going to, Michael Piller had to step in according to the legends and kind of reshape it, because originally there was like Q in Crisis. He was going to be a homeless person, and his powers had created chaos all over the galaxy, and it was quite a different show. So enter Michael Piller, who's always kind of the silent person who is very influential in how TNG ended up being shaped. And then there's even stories of John Delancey, which have proven to be kind of like not so, but even John Delancey coming back was something that everyone was really excited about, and they thought, let's bring Q back into this. And there used to be stories that John Delancey wanted it and went to Berman and was like, I gotta be in the finale, but and then he was like, don't worry, you're in it or whatever. But I love that this was kind of like a chance for Star Trek to achieve something new that it hadn't done, which is a full run of a TV series. And of course, it did it again with Deep Space Nine, and it did it again with Voyager. And then unfortunately, it went back to history did repeat itself, and Star Trek Enterprise was canceled.
Back to tradition.
And it's back to the tradition.
Oh.
It would be a powerful statement. I don't wish this at all upon Star Trek Discovery, but it would have been a powerful statement if fans were just like, we just don't want to go in the past anymore. All the past shows never make it a full run. But I don't want that. I'm glad Star Trek Discovery is continuing.
Well, they very well tried, didn't they?
They tried. And fans were like, no.
So Strange New Worlds? You don't want Strange New Worlds?
Yeah.
I do want that. That's the one exception to my rule. I've gone on record. I'm so charmed by Anson Mount and Ethan Peck and Rebecca
Star Trek
Romijn.
5 was a prequel.
Star Trek
5 was a prequel.
Yeah, it was going to be.
Does that make Star Trek 6 a prequel too?
Star Trek 6 is also a prequel. It's the sequel to another prequel, but it is a prequel to TNG.
Yeah.
No, you're wrong. You haven't
Can we rate
transcended.
this? Let's rate this man.
I just want.
Let's rate this man.
We're reaching an hour and 47 minutes.
Okay,
we're longer
gonna rate
than the
it.
actual story.
We're gonna rate it, and then we're gonna end on Gates McFadden, and then we'll say goodbye. But okay, so as per tradition, we'll end on Gates McFadden. She's the only cameo I haven't shown, the original cameo, the Gates McFadden one. We're gonna end on that. I'm just letting you know.
Okay.
The original,
the true.
The original. We gotta end
USS Pasteur cameo.
You can't get Patrick Stewart. He's not on cameo. You can't get Sir Patrick. You can get Denise Crosby now, but I didn't get to this.
I met her once.
I know. Anyways, I give this
your Brent Spiner.
I give this episode and he's not on cameo either. I give this episode an infinity. It's unrateable. To me, it's priceless among episodes of Star Trek: The Next Generation and Star Trek in general. It's historic. It's look at.
I'll give you this. I didn't see it coming. Yes, you got me. I
You
feel
didn't see
I
it?
had.
What did you think? What did you think?
I
was
thought it
gonna
was going to be
say?
a 10. I thought you were going to say, of course, it's a 10, la-di-da,
No,
but
it's
it's not.
unrateable.
You
It's
gave
totally
you gave it an infinity.
An infinity.
I don't know how I feel
infinity.
now. you give it a 10 in every timeline.
Yes.
That's why it's infinity. Because
That's
every different timeline that occurs, it's a 10. Another 10.
There you go.
Another
There's
10.
not
There you
one
go.
time- there's not
There
one
you go.
timeline
You finally
where
transcended your
Sahel-
3-dimensional thinking.
I finally
reached
passed the test.
The
of
test.
Q.
You finally passed the test of Starfleet.
It's always a 10.
It's always a 10, no matter what. You did it.
Wow.
All right,
God.
Sean. Speak now or forever
Well,
hold your peace.
I won't give it an infinity. I give it an 8.
Ah! This hurts me so much.
It's
You
very
wound me.
high.
You wound me. You wound
Just
me
to-
on my
just
day
to
of
anger you.
celebration.
Just
You
to anger you,
do.
I also give Deep Space Nine finale. I would give that probably an 8 as well. So I think they both
What?
on par with each other.
Wow.
Oh, you wound us both. Wow.
Is there what is the Voyager? What does Endgame get? What is
I think a 6. I think I put down a 6. I love Voyager, but I think
we
that
know.
the finale of Voyager is
I
such a
agree
lost
with you.
opportunity. We don't see what happens in the finale. It's like all an episode of like an erased timeline. All we see is a couple of fireworks of the real finale to the real point. I'm like, that's not. I can do fireworks. Like, it's so
Wow.
disappointing.
Good to know. So
Wow.
okay, in that context, I'll accept. I guess your 8.
Oh, the rolling of the eyes and everything.
It hasn't happened. It hasn't happened in a long time. The Doctor, what do you say?
It's a 7 for me.
Oh, come! I need to.
He
No.
I need
added the
to
for
evoke-
me, but he didn't want to finish the sentence. He's like, it's a 7, and he was going to end it there. Like, that is the rating. It is a 7.
I have to evoke some kind of authority
No,
here.
there's
and
nothing to evoke.
You have to at
It's a
least
7 for me because
He's just going to round it up to a 25 anyway.
yeah, exactly. It's infinity, so it's
Oh,
no,
it's
but so
infinity.
why is it 7 for you? Why is it a 7 for
there
you?
because
It's his Q problem. It's his Q issue.
no, it's not just a Q problem. I don't have this nostalgia. Okay, everything you've said and you know the nostalgia and all this stuff. To me, I don't love the show. I don't. For me,
That's right, I always forget.
you know,
It's true.
I love the original crew. I don't love this
Okay, I
crew.
see what you mean.
It doesn't mean as much to me. And then also, you have to remember that at the time, I think a lot of the potential, I guess, magic of the series finale was robbed because you knew the movie was coming out. I think it was like 3 months later or 4 months later in November. I forget when this aired.
They often Ron Moore and
Really?
Braga often get
Yeah.
confused even about what they wrote was for the movie or for the
Right.
final episode. There's like a lot of intermixing. It's true.
Wow.
So for me, it just never felt like a finale like Deep Space Nine did. Like when Deep Space Nine's finale came out, I knew this is it. This is the end. Because number one, no one really likes Deep Space Nine. So I knew this was it. This is the final word. So it felt final to me. I never felt this was final to me. And then also
This was a transition.
it was a transition. What I thought was final was Q. I really thought this was the end for Q. But then, of course, Voyager brings back
And
Q
Deep
every
Space
other
Nine.
episode.
Deep Space
Well,
Nine
Deep
also.
Space Nine,
Q2
right.
And Q Kid and
Q, right. Q4,
Fury
and right, exactly.
every form and shape of Q.
But
Right,
let me
so
ask you something. That being
nothing-
said,
It
that
doesn't
being said,
resonate
though,
with me.
I never felt like this was a finale in that sense. I felt like it was.
It's kind of a chapter end, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's well, it.
I mean, it's a
It's
good
interesting.
story. Don't
It's
get me
the end
It's
of
a
wrong.
book
finale. It's a finale, but
Right.
not in the sense of like it closes out the story. It's a finale of an event that that's what I know. I know that we talk about a lot of things, but this closes out a time period, an event, and I knew it even then. Like I knew this was the end of something. This was the end of something.
End of a show.
Kind of. Well, yeah, but like a period of life, even. Like I don't know. I maybe I was traveling to future.
Yeah, your emotions are
Yeah.
very tied into it. I understand.
Yeah, it's
that.
true. It's true.
And
That's
But
why it
for
resonates
me-
so much with him.
It's kind of like high school graduation in a way. Kids, they get to the seniors, they get to those last few months, and they all start crying and they're all hugging. And the reality is, they're all going to see each other.
The
Most
next
of them
day,
at
often.
day, right at the next day,
often.
and they're going to see each other on their phones, and so it's all a lot of emotions for not. I mean, I get it. Obviously, you won't be in that situation. You're not going to be in the classes. It's a different environment. It's not going to be the same. But at the same time, it's not like you're never going to see each other again.
It's the end of this. Right?
Here's what it is.
But
it's more than that.
But
it's more than that. It's the end. I knew and felt it was the end of Roddenberry style true. No, I don't like that word. It was the end of a Roddenberry style of Star Trek, because I consider Deep Space Nine true Star Trek. I consider Voyager true Star Trek. I even consider Discovery to be true Star Trek. But it was the end of a Roddenberry story. Even though he didn't get to finish it, this marked the final kind of.
I'll give you that
thing that Roddenberry did, and that is I've always made that delineator. I've always made that marker, if you will, and I gave it that, even though, again, like I said, he didn't get to complete it. I give this to Roddenberry. I give this whole experience to Roddenberry in my view of Star Trek. And so I felt like I was very much aware of that when I saw Deep Space Nine getting more exciting at the time, for others. I wasn't as excited about it when it first aired, but then you see Voyager, of course, which is completely the vision of these people, the people who were making Star Trek at this moment. So this was also them kind of like honoring him in the sense, like they closed it out in the way that it began, in a sense. Like it's a perfect loop. You can stop. I've always said this, and I love that. You can stop TNG, All Good Things, and then start from Encounter at Farpoint and start the journey again. It's like a nice little cycle that occurs. Like it evokes that almost. Like in fact, in this rewatching, I wanted to go back and watch Encounter at Farpoint.
I can actually give you that. I can give you that Gene Roddenberry was the one that put Q in that original Encounter at Farpoint script. He's the one that added all of the Q in to make it the double feature. And so they finished it as kind of like an homage to him by returning, like bringing back the character and the concept that he had originated in that episode. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I guess.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
All right. So, wow, I got that. Now we get to do another thing that you weren't expecting. Some more unexpected things. We get to rate the entire series.
What?
Star Trek: The Next Generation. Yeah. Right. Didn't we agree once
we thought we were going to do that on the season? Are we going to have a season discussion?
Oh, we got to have a season. Oh, audience, It's not over. Starfleet Boy is so bad. I forgot that we have to do our season discussion. There's so much. There's so much
2-hour discussion.
There's so much more to come. I'm
sorry. I mean, we do, right?
I don't know. Should there be a season discussion?
We've done it for all the other ones, but we have to do it right, though. We got to, let's really break it down and analyze them.
We get to show off Gary's artwork and things like that. All right, so let me show our beloved Dr. Crusher, and I'll say our final words for this episodic journey.
1 hour, 57 minutes.
And we're gonna come on. It was worth it. It was worth it for this episode. All right, here we go. This is the best thing I ever got in my life, and it still is true today. This endorsement. Audience, here we go from Captain Crusher herself.
And we are back for another exciting episode of Starfleet Boy, which is a casual and informal discussion about what else? Star Trek. Now, you might say, come on, there's a lot of podcasts like this and YouTube things, but these guys actually are casual. I mean, one of them was eating a sandwich as they were discussing Remember Me. That's how informal it is. And you can wear pajamas while you watch it. But the truth is, they're also kind of pithy, these things. Like, I loved what they were saying about my episode, and I watched a few others. They are utterly charming, these two guys. Seriously. Yes, they're nerds, but I loved them. So I would suggest you start watching them and learn a little bit about those episodes that you've been watching. They've got some good takes on things. Bye. Starfleet.
We're charming.
She wasn't talking about Sean, by the way. She was talking about
No,
you.
just talking about the original co-host.
So goosebumps.
That gives me goosebumps too. I love when
you got the sexy whisper.
She whispers
Yes.
it. Yeah, she's
Yes.
Captain Pressure.
Wow.
Anyways, gentlemen, thank you for coming on this discussion with me. There are tons of people I would like to thank, but I would like to start off with Gary of Trekker Prize, who is
No, not Gary.
yes, Gary, who has given so generously and kindly of his time, and who has become a dear friend. And we're sorry we couldn't have him on this episode. I didn't want to say this in the beginning, Sean, because I didn't want to make you feel bad, but my original plan was just me and the doctor. So you barely made it. No, I'm just kidding.
I wouldn't have been offended. It would have been fine.
I know you wouldn't have been.
I would have just cried a bit. No, it would have been fine.
You've earned your place. But the
Yeah,
two of you,
of course, yes, at the table, the captain's table.
the two of you have given.
Well, he's an admiral.
I'm an admiral.
He's upgraded himself.
Oh yeah.
I'm also.
He's left us.
Wow.
He left the room.
Oh my goodness. Captains. I'm trying to thank you. I'd like to thank you both, because you've given a lot of airtime to Starfleet Boy, especially Sean, who surpassed you, Humbert.
Yes, I know.
He is the most prolific co-host on Starfleet Boy. In fact, I gave him the title of number one. So to
Totally understand.
Thank you, sir.
well deserved.
He likes the show better than I do. I mean, I'm not. I'm not going to.
I'd like to thank the numerous folks that have been on throughout the last 4 years. PJ, Text Trek. Sorry, actually, Father's not been on, but he's here in spirit. PJ, Sima, Jamie. Who else? Let's see. Mandroid, the Major, Trekkie Rob, of course, who's been on a bunch of episodes. Nick, I'm so honored that Ketwalski's been on a couple of my discussions. Everyone knows.
Now he's YouTube famous, so
He's super.
You can bank on his presence. You can have that episode called "The Discussion with the Real Ketwalski."
I'm gonna change the title to the discussion with the Real Ketwalski. And who am I missing, Sean? Am I missing anyone?
I don't know. You should have really written this down.
Yeah, right.
There have been so many people on Starfleet Boy that actually
You should have thanked them in the final discussion, which will be the next one, shouldn't you? You're thanking them here.
That's true. Yeah, you can make a list in the next for the season
This
finale.
is like so. You just totally
season recap.
You just totally popped my bubble. I was like, this is like my finale for TNG, and you guys all reminded me. Wait, there's one more discussion, but that's how Starfleet Boy goes. I must learn to govern my passions.
This penultimate episode of Starfleet Boy is as disorganized as the penultimate episode of TNG. So
To be fair, this is just the end. Just like in All Good Things, it's the end of a chapter. Starfleet Boy is going on to discuss the original series, and I look forward to bringing that to you, audience. And then the final thing,
going to discuss Buffy.
the final thanks goes to the audience who puts up with this kind of thing for 2 hours. Those of you who made it this far, we really appreciate you, and we thank you for sticking with us. And anyways, on that note.
How does Riker do it? Like this?
Oh yes, you got to do it like
that.
Just like Jonathan Frakes. So live long and prosper, everybody, and we'll see you next time.
I was waiting for something more epic than next time.
What else can I do? Oh yes, make it so.
Make
it so. Engage.